What's going on, y'all? Welcome to another episode of the Sensibly Cynical podcast. Today's episode is going to be absolutely fire, like for real, because shortly I am set to be joined by Lyve Kaos. He is an absolutely amazing MC out of Toronto, Canada, by way of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. This guy has paid his dues, been through the grinds of the music industry, and he has come through with flying colors, killing the game, always. Because if you look up his stuff, he has a smooth, chill vibe to his music that you really can't teach. And everyone should check him out. He was on Insta Live with me a while back. I appreciate everyone who joined us. So here it is, my interview with the one and only Lyve Kaos. All right, with me on the line, this guy is an absolutely legit MC out of Canada by way of Florida. Lyve Kaos, what's good, man?
What's good, homie? What up, Sean?
Toronto, Canada, right?
Yeah, that's right. Toronto, Canada. Greatest city in the world.
Yeah, man. Well, I appreciate your time, bro.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me on, man. Always appreciate it, man. Always down to network, always down to collab. I've been checking out some of your podcasts, like, recently, too, man. And, yeah, I love the setup, man. And, you know, my apologies in advance. If I start asking questions, I'm getting used to not being in the podcast.
No worries, man. Sometimes that happens to the best of us, man. I'll do that sometimes where it's like I'll accidentally interrupt someone's conversation. So, you know, it's give and take, you know. But I'm excited to get into your story, man. So talk about that. How did you start, you know, your musical journey?
So I wrote my first rhyme when I was 8, but really I got to credit my older brothers. My older brothers raised me on some real good quality pop from the time I was young. Like I remember like looking through like the Takao credits and listening to Wu-Tang when I was like 5, 6 years old. My brother had like the Wu-Tang sign on his backpack, and I think around the time I was 8, they were a lot older than me. They're about 7 years older than me. So if I was 8, they were probably about 15. They're twins, by the way, my older brothers.
Yeah.
And sometime around high school, they started freestyling, and you know, they would always play beats at the house. They'd always have people over, and once I got seeing like 4 or 5 people go back and forth into a cipher, like I was just fascinated by it. So I literally, no joke, wrote my first rhyme when I was 8 years old. I just kept writing from there. I remember I was finally able to freestyle, like a pretty crappy freestyle by the time I was 10. Like I could put rhymes together like on a beat basically, like off the top. I didn't really get good until I was like probably like 12, 13. Then around school I would just kind of, you know, flow off of whatever was going on around me, whether it's like some teacher's stupid toupee or you know, rockers or whatever the case was. But then I discovered battling probably like when I was like 14. And I don't know if you've been on YouTube, but you'll see some like old videos of like when I was 14, I was probably like 80 pounds. Just this tiny kid going up and battling these grown men. But I love battling, man. I love freestyle altogether, man. And it's kind of sad. It's not the same culture as it was before. Like, you know, even if you look at battles today, everything's written and pre-written like 3 months ahead of time too. Right. And the beauty of freestyling was just this is the problem with freestyle battles. It was like you kind of had to go through a lot of shitty MCs before you get to like the conference finals and things like that. To the best 8 battlers. Sure. It wasn't entertaining towards the end, but when you get cats who can freestyle and are really good off the top, something about that improvised line of whatever's happening right then and there, like double tracking in your mind. So like even though I'm spinning something, like I'm 8 bars ahead thinking of the next punchline, putting together the setup for it. So yeah, I just fell in love with the battle culture in general, man. I love hip hop. I was always encapsulated in it. And then yeah, once I started recording and performing, like, you know, it just took off from there, man. It's always been a passion of mine, and I don't see it slowing down anytime soon. Yeah, man. So talk about that. Like, what was it? The King of the Beats tournament? What was that? The first battle I was in was reggae wear battles, and it was actually a shopping mall in Miami, in this store. And literally they would push all the clothes aside, open up the space, a giant crowd would come inside, and yeah, they did a tournament. You know, the winner of each. And the first battle I wasn't even supposed to battle. I was actually going there just to support my brother, and they still had extra slots on the competition. So, you know, I went and signed up just for fun. And I went through 2 rounds. I actually ended up seeing my brother in the 3rd round, and I got through him. It was a funny battle. It was obviously, because, you know, it's a family him, got to the end, and I won my first battle then and there. And from there, because I was in that scene, like I was able to network and meet other people. I met H2O. I met a lot of dudes who really excelled, but back then, they were just, meeting up and ciphering and things like that. But because of that, you were kind of in the circle. You knew which events were coming up, and you planned in advance, whatever was happening. But
when was that?
Yeah, this was, I would say, about 2005. So, yeah, 2004, 2000. No, a little bit sooner. I'm sorry. I would say 2001. I started actually entering events. It didn't start really building up, I think, until around like 2004. I don't know if you remember when 8 Mile dropped. When 8 Mile came out, for some reason, there was battles like every single week all over the place. There was like at skate parks, in school. There was a battle on the radio station 99 Jams, which is it's a big hip hop station in South Florida.
Right.
And they would have a daily competition. It was kind of like a cipher, and they'd play a beat. And I held it down for a month straight. They had to retire me. They awarded me an Xbox. But I met some pretty dope cats along the way. I don't know if you remember Jin, the MC. He was the Freestyle Friday champion on BET. Yeah. Chinese kid, he was sick off the top. And yeah, he won like 7 weeks in a row. He actually got signed to Rough Riders. And this is a dude who used to live in Miami. And so I've seen him at battles. He was always good at battles too. And I remember talking to him on like on AOL Instant Messenger or whatever. He was telling me he was to New York. Yeah.
AOL, man, I messaged so many chicks on there, man.
8 sex locations.
Yeah, teen chats. Yeah.
It was a wild time. Yeah, so he moved to New York, and we were part of this message board called mcbattles.com, where people would just load up from all over the country, actually all over the world, where people would load up their own videos. And a lot of people run Immortal Technique was on that message board too. He would upload some of his stuff on there. And yeah, Jin went to New York. He got into the Freestyle Friday. He got signed to Rough Riders, but he really wasn't as great of a freestyle MC he was. He wasn't that great of a songwriter. And so his album kind of flopped, and he disappeared for a little while. And I think he's a Christian rapper now. Went from a battle MC to a Christian rapper. So, I met him. I met the likes of Recognized, he got signed with Mayday to Tech Nine's label, Strange Music. A lot of dope cats. I still love the battle scene, man. I love up here, King of the Dot in Toronto is actually the biggest battle league in the world. And they do an excellent job, man. Like the quality of the videos, like the editing, and even the competitors themselves are just nasty. But it's a different element because now there's no beats, right? So there's just acapella, which is kind of looks a little WWE-ish, like John Cena, like going up against somebody. And then it's also written too, so they just write months in advance about the person, and it gets pretty. I don't know if you watch some of those battles, but they get pretty savage. Like they get pretty personal about people's family.
Yeah. Well, I remember the Wild and Out. That was the show. That was the show I watched as a kid.
Some of those guys were pretty dope battle MCs, like in league, like Conceited, and some of those guys were battling even before that show, and it's a pretty good outlet for battle MCs if they can get on that show.
Yeah, so I mentioned to start the podcast that you're actually originally from Florida. So talk about your transition to Toronto. How was the journey there?
When I came up to Toronto, actually it was pretty much like around 2005. I got licensed as a mortgage broker, man, and I was actually in the mortgage industry. And once the industry kind of imploded, I don't know if you remember when the recession was going on. It was pretty
2008.
Yeah, right around 2008, 2009. Yeah. Luckily, I hung on pretty well. Like I was still in sales and I was doing okay for a little while, but it still got worse. And at the time, they were actually blacklisting mortgage brokers. So when you were going to look for a job elsewhere, it would literally say mortgage brokers need not apply because of the amount of fraud and stuff like that was going on in the mortgage industry in Florida, and then two, they just thought once the market turned around, you were just going to leave the company and just go back to doing mortgages, I guess. So I got into construction. I was doing construction for a little bit, and then even musically too. Not to say that there's a ceiling or anything like that, but it just got kind of redundant. Like you were doing shows, but you're with the same. Pretty much with the same local acts all the time, same crowd. I just felt like I was running into the same thing over and over again. I didn't really see much of a future, or it felt kind of stagnant for a bit. So I thought, I have family in New York. My mom's side of the family is all in Queens, in New York, and and I'm Canadian, and my dad's side of the family is up in Canada. So
right.
To get a fresh start, best thing to do is head to another country altogether. So in the beginning, yeah, it was a little bit of a culture shock. I would say it was a great decision because it helped me out a lot. I met my wife here. I got reconnected with a lot of family that I'm very close to. A lot of new opportunities here. Musically, you kind of had to start from the bottom again because you were just a name that nobody really heard of. But at least you had a little bit of a resume coming from Florida too, right? So no joke, the first show I finally got onto, it was actually a mistake, but I literally paid my way on it. I've never paid to get on a show before. I was usually either invited by the promoter or obviously I would get paid to do the show. But it was Apathy performing, and he's like one of my favorite underground rappers, right?
Right.
So I saw it, and then I hit up the promoter and just kind of asked him if there was a promoter, and then there was Apathy's manager. So I hit up Apathy's manager directly, who was doing the tour for him, and asked if there was any slots open, like, for the local Toronto show. And he said, not really, but, for $100, I could slip you on for 15 minutes. I said, all right, that's cool with me, man. Whatever. You gotta get your foot in the door some way, somehow. So I e-transferred the guy $100, and as time was going by, I'm trying to promote the show, but, like, the flyers that they're putting out on the Facebook page and things like that just never had my name. So finally, like, I messaged him maybe like a week beforehand, and I was like, hey, any update on the flyer or at least on the Facebook page so I can at least share this information and promote it myself. And he was like, yeah, I'll get back to you about that. Literally 3 days before the show, I messaged the actual promoter who was throwing it at the venue. He ended up being like a tour manager for me, like later on. But I messaged him privately, and I was like, I don't know what's going on, man, but I paid this guy $100 to get on this venue or to get on this event, and he knew nothing of it. He didn't know anything about it. There was no room for it, and so he ended up getting my money back. So he sent me the money back, but because he felt bad, he was like, yo, listen, I'll still throw you up there for like 10 minutes or so, or if you want to just rock the crowd for like 3 tracks. I was like, yeah, for sure, man. I got a video of it on YouTube, but I went up there. They had a bunch of dope local acts. I went up there. I held it down, man. I fucking rocked the crowd, and made good friends with the DJ who was DJing that night. I've rocked with him numerous times at other shows, and that promoter, we got really close, and he put me on a lot of spots. I got networks from that event to open up for Ari the Rugged Man, opening up for Onyx. I met MLP, opened up for them. So it put me on to quite a bit. So I mean that what would have been a $100 investment really got me out there, and I ended up on tour in Ontario also.
Really?
So it led to a lot of other shows, and I pretty much reward that, or I conclude that's pretty much was the original door that opened up for me.
Yeah. So how did you meet DJ? Was it Deluxe? Who's that? Like a friend, or how'd that start?
Yeah, he's actually a childhood friend, man. He's actually shout out to Ruben. It's Ruben's cousin, and Ruben was basically best friends with my older brothers. So Deluxe used to come around when he would visit, and he'd bring his MPC and stuff. He'd always be working on beats. He always made dope beats. We never collaborated earlier, but I think it was sometime around 2000. I was still in high school, but we did the song Whispers together. That was about 2005. We did that one track together. I was in a group at the time. I was with the Deadbeat. So, we were kind of rocking shows down in Florida, a lot of shows in West Palm Beach and Miami. We did Rock the Bells after our album dropped. So the first Rock the Bells was in Miami. And, it was a wonderful experience, man. We got to open up for Wu-Tang, Nas, Mos Def and Kweli were there, Common. It was a huge, huge festival. I'll never forget that. And so Deluxe did a couple beats for that album and for our second album also. When I moved to Toronto, it was kind of just a fresh start altogether. And he was also going through like a reset on his own too. He had been dealing with some things and kind of came out of like a little bit of a mental hole where he was inspired now creatively. He just wanted to make music and stuff. So he was showing me his beat collection. He had a ton of stuff. I would just and this just helped me get it. I didn't have any friends or anything up here in Toronto, so it was just me. I got a job, and like it's funny because I didn't have a license at the time. I was just taking the bus to work. The majority of the Project Lion album I wrote just walking or on public transportation. I literally got really good at just like having my earphones in and walking down the street and just typing rhymes while I was listening to his beat. And I met up with a studio over here through my cousin. Pretty fire studio. The engineer that was working there was also from Florida, so we linked up pretty well. He was from Jacksonville, Brian Moon, and he was just an amazing. Like I've never worked with another engineer since then, and it's kind of troubles me because I got spoiled to how good he was. So he would like record and like he would literally be mixing it down like as he's recording. So literally like when you're on a budget at the time in the studio, like I know some rappers are probably like they'll book like 3 hours in advance and they'll just do a song like in those 3 hours. Me, because it's like I'm booking an hour and I'm trying to like fit in as much as I can, I would constantly like try to memorize and work out my lyrics, make sure everything's down packed because I try to squeeze out 2 tracks when I get in there. And he was a perfect engineer to do it with because he didn't have to take too much time afterwards to mix things down, level the EQ. And I got into a weekly routine, so I was doing it every Sunday. So every Sunday for an hour, I would go down there and try to knock out 2 tracks. for Project Lion, I think I recorded like close to 32 tracks. So even though we only like used like 19, I think there was like 32 tracks overall, all deluxe beats.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just great quality. And sadly, he overstayed his visa, and he ended up going back to Florida. I lost track of him, man. I don't know where he was. Last time I talked to him, he was like in the mountains of Colorado or something. Free spirit, like hippie kind of dude.
Well,
so I mean, I wish I could get him on a new project, to mix things down. He was just amazing. Some engineers like actually play, musical instruments, and those are the best ones because they know, notes, chords, everything like that. So when they mix things down, man, it's like a meticulous package.
I see Eastside. I like Re-Evolution. That was kind of a cool vibe to it. What was the most inspiring song? What's like your inspiration, I guess, musically?
In the beginning, it was mostly like when I was with the crew, the Deadbeats, we were just having fun, man. We were literally like 18 to 21 years old, and we were just, still going to keggers and partying and things like that. We had one of our homeboys who was pretty much part of the crew. He was a graffiti artist named Decal. And he used to, like, in our sessions, he would literally be, like, while we're writing, he would be sketching and doing graffiti and stuff. He ended up becoming pretty famous. He's signed to Marvel now, and he does a lot of the covers for Marvel. So shout out Decal. But yeah, so at that time, it was mostly just partying, having fun, punchlines, battle stuff. A little bit after that, I did an album with DJ Paper called Intifada. And it was mostly just political, man. It was mostly just about social justice, police reform, the prison system, and that really, what inspired me a lot during that time, I was just reading a lot. So what we ended up not doing, but what we wanted to do was every track was based on a book I read, actually. So we were going to try to name each song after the book that I read that inspired the track. But because of copyright issues and things like that, you can't really, it's not the best thing to do. So, but that was all inspired by books and inspired by politics, and I'd like to get back to that, pretty soon. With Deluxe, as sad as it is, what inspired both of those albums, Project Lion, I had literally just did a year in prison. So I did a year in state prison in Florida. I was at Moorhaven, and when I got out, that's when I came to Toronto, to get a fresh start. Once you're in Florida and you get a felony or anything like that, it's almost impossible to even get a job at Walmart, pretty much, right? I remember they used to have a saying that was like, because a lot of guys on probation in Florida are from different states, and they're just living there, like they're originally from Boston or New York, like snowbirds. And they get in trouble and they get stuck in Florida because they got to do probation. So they used to say, Florida, come for vacation, stay for probation, violation, incarceration. It's kind of rare to run into Floridians that don't have, some kind of background for the most part. So I mean, that was the sad part. But so then that was the Project Lion album. That was really what inspired it. It was basically me getting a fresh start, getting a reset, being able to coming to Canada kind of allowed me to use the experiences that I had to become the person I wanted to be. When you stay around in the same areas with the same people, it's very hard to get out of old habits and things like that. It's only a matter of time, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when I came to Canada, I was pretty much allowed to use those experiences to build up a better person, and so it gave me a lot of confidence. And Project Lion is basically about that, taking the good and the bad and the trials and tribulations and turning it into something positive. And then ironically, me and DJ Deluxe loved the album. We had great chemistry with it. He's so musically inclined with beats that it's like he would send me a loop, I would write to the loop, record it, send it back to him, and he would rearrange the beat to the lyrics over again. There's a lot of change-ups and things like that. And I loved working with him, man. It was a very, the beats on there aren't typical, like, hip-hop, boom-bap.
Right.
A lot of them, he gets pretty creative on it, and it allows me to his kind of beats are the type where, like, when you listen to it, you can think of a story or an experience in your head, and like, the pen moves itself almost. And then he's also an incredible turntablist. He's also a battle DJ, so he's won numerous competitions in Chicago. He's based in Chicago now, but he's won numerous competitions, scratching, and he's amazing on the end.
That whole scene's more like a subculture, right? Like it's a whole new thing, like underground stuff.
Yeah, it's pretty. I remember when I was in the '90s, there were videos, but they were like in we would watch the DMC competitions, which would be breakdance battles, and the DJ competition was the huge one. It was crazy. Like they would do all kinds of nutty stuff. Like they could make like the guitar sound or the records like the scratching sound like guitars. I've seen guys like do like showcase and like set the records on fire while they're scratching. Like they do all kinds of nutty stuff on there. But I remember watching it then, but it was all based out of like Germany and like it was mostly like European places where they were doing the competitions. But he was in America. Yeah, it's a huge subculture, man. I don't know as to what level it's at now. Like, I haven't really seen any recent competitions, but I can only imagine, man. There was DJ Schubert, who was like, I think they retired him because he was another Filipino DJ, but he would just, he would match in competitions. He was just like, I don't even know his kind of like wrist movements to do those kind of cuts and mixes. And he came out with it was a trippy DVD called, I think it's called Twister or something like that. And it was just like almost like this anime cartoon of just scratches and dope beats. And yeah, I mean, they get creative with it, man. There's also the X-Men. I don't know if you've heard of the X-Men, but it's like a super crew of DJs. I believe they're based out of California. But they do shows, and it's just 5 of them on the turntables going back and forth, just ciphering with each other. So Deluxe can do that. So I kind of just respect, aside from beats, I respect his skill as a DJ because he's a DJ's DJ. Like, it's almost like how I can freestyle. He has this background where it's like, he can still fuck up a set. He can still rock a show by himself if he wanted to, really,
Yeah.
Even recently, he's been doing, since quarantine and stuff like that last year, he was doing a lot of DJ sets on Twitch. And, like, it's just entertaining. Like, me and my wife would just, like, watch it, like, Saturday nights. It's like being in a lounge and, like, your boy's DJing for you.
Yeah.
So it's pretty dope. Because of the success of that one, we went into Lost Boys. Lost Boys was kind of a repeat, unfortunately. I used to go back to Florida a lot. Like, I would travel probably like 3 or 4 times a year to see my family, see my mom and brothers and sisters and stuff, and my old friends.
Yeah.
And I was traveling back in 2013 for Christmas. It was Christmas Eve. And no joke, the feds came and snatched me up for a case that was even older than the last one that I did time for. So they snatched me up for something that happened in 2008. It was a mortgage fraud case. It was a company I was working for back then. And it was shocking. It was crazy to me to go through that system again. And this time it was federal, right? So I bonded out somewhere in New York. I flew down to go to the court. In my head, I didn't do it, so I was just going to go to trial regardless. But they snatched me up like the first court date. Like, there was they denied me bond, said I was a danger to the community. This is a white collar crime, mind you, right? But said I was a danger to the community, took away the bond, and like me and my 9 co-defendants went in, and I just didn't come out. Like, I ended up found me guilty, and I got sentenced to 3 years. Did the 3 years, came back in 2016, and then 2016. By that time, you have no idea how many rhymes I wrote inside it. When I came out, that's when I recorded Lost Boys.
Coming out, did your mindset change, like, career-wise? Were you like, all right, I'm going to have a different, like, focus?
The second time around, it's a weird thing for me because during that time, when I was working for the mortgage company, this was, like, the cleanest part of where I was going. So, like, during that time of my life, like, when I was younger, you sell dope, you do your thing on the side, you're making money, whatever. I got jammed up, I get it. The place I was working at, I started as a telemarketer. It was a mortgage company. But I was very, I would stay late. I would listen to the loan officers when they pitch, and I try to learn as much as I can. When I got out, or when I first got charged with the trafficking charge, you kind of have to take that same hustle and drive and put it into something positive. So when I turned 18, they actually, or I was 18 at the time, but they paid for my mortgage broker's course. That's how I got licensed. And then from there, I was doing mortgages there. So it was a part of my life where I thought that was like, I was cleaning everything up. I was putting on a shirt and tie, doing something respectable. This was supposed to be the good part of what I was doing. So it was a little bit of a brain fuck when you're like, you get jammed up for that, and it's like, you can't win. It's like, I thought I was doing something good over here, So yeah, my mindset did change a little bit. The first time around, it was like, I felt like a lot more positive, but also naive in Canada too. Like, I'm just like whistling, like packing my lunch to work and taking the bus.
Yeah.
Just trying to stay out of trouble altogether.
I understand that, man. Like 9 to 5s and shit.
Yeah, I was happy with it, but the second time around, once I got jammed up, it's kind of like, not in a negative way. When I say like you develop this don't give a fuck attitude, it's not that like I don't care anymore, but it's also like the things that life throws at you, you really just have to take it in stride and move on and just keep going. Like, you can't really dwell on it. So it's not that I don't give a fuck, but it's also gave me a certain kind of confidence that's just like, all right, whatever happens, happens, but you always got to bounce back, and you always got to come back stronger, and you always got to build on top of that,
Like, who in your opinion is, like, the GOAT, like the greatest of all time?
For me, it's Black Thought from the Roots, like hands down, especially recently with the new stuff that he's been coming out with. I've been a Roots fan since I was a kid. Like, that was really what turned me on to, away from, like, because I grew up on a lot of New York gritty rap and, storytelling and things like that, like Nas, Biggie, Wu-Tang. Black Thought kind of brought this finesse. He made it cool to be intelligent, and he was with a live band. I always wanted to rock with a live Like every instrument that they play, like they're an expert at. Like Questlove is one of the top drummers. You know, they have one of the best basses. And Black Thought, for what it's worth, to me is the greatest MC. And the reason I say this is because even if you check out the stuff from the early '90s on those Roots albums, those verses, if they came out today, are still mind blowing to me. They're still like impressive to me. They still run circles around like I think 95% of MCs. Second is performance. If you ever see him perform, like the Roots concert has been the greatest concert I've ever seen. They perform for like 3-4 hours straight. They never stop playing music. His breath control is amazing. Like he has no hype man, nothing, and he'll just keep going 3-4 hours into it, drenched in sweat. He'll stop. He'll freestyle too. His freestyle's amazing. And then also like he can just rap about anything. Like and he makes like whether it's love, whether it's politics, whether it's the cops, whether it's the neighborhood he's from, whether it's some smooth jazz. Like he can annihilate anything. And I just think I'm always impressed with it. And he's always gotten better. Like I'm pretty sure he's almost 50, if not 50 now. I thought he's the type of MC that couldn't get any better than what he was doing before, but he continually impresses me. With hip hop, the stuff that I like from producers are samples. So they'll take samples from classic records. Deluxe is like an expert at this. He'll take some classic stuff and he chops it up to the point you can't even recognize the original song anymore. He'll take the bass lines and he'll redo the bass lines in different notes and create something completely new. You know, a good example of this to see is they used to have, I don't know if they still do it, but they used to have a tour called Beat Society where they would take these best producers like I believe Madlib was on there one time, Ninth Wonder, all these great guys. And what they would do is like, let's say there's 7 of them with their equipment set up on stage and they would drop a sample. So it might be something like an opera. It might be like Polynesian jazz or something very like unique. And each one of them would have a set time to make a beat out of it. And then they would just go in a circle, and it's insane, like, the different types of beat. Like, one beat would just be hardcore, like something you would just, like, MOP would rock to. And another beat could just be something completely different, something completely smooth, and like a love song. So I like that. I like that crate digging, sampling, chopping up the samples. For the most part, EDM, like, I like that tropical house that, what is it, Major Lazer used to produce. Like, I find that pretty cool. Like, those are good vibes.
So, talk to me about this Rob Ford freestyle. When did you do that?
Rest in peace, Rob Ford. So that was, I think, 2012 when I first moved to Toronto. Rob Ford was the mayor here. So I don't know if you know the history of Rob Ford, but he was the mayor of Toronto. Basically, some dudes came out with a video, and they basically were telling the press they had a video of him smoking crack. So everyone was going crazy about this. The police were actually following him around. Like, there was a huge investigation into it. He kept denying it. But there was so much evidence out there of people who knew he smoked crack. And even when they released, like, the discovery of, like, what the police were finding, he was just a character altogether. He would be in the McDonald's drive-thru. This is the mayor, mind you. He fired his own driver. And he would throw out, like, a Mickey, like a vodka. So he's drinking in the drive-thru. He would throw out the Mickey, orders McDonald's, eat McDonald's, throw out the trash, like, in the parking lot. It was wild. It was just a wild time. So every day there was just something else in the news. He was denying it. People were confronting him about it. He was kind of losing his shit and getting a little wacky. So when Jay-Z dropped it now, I forget which album it was, but the single was Tom Ford. Mm-hmm. And when I heard the beat was amazing. So I wanted to rock the beat regardless. But, obviously with what was going on here in Toronto, I thought it was perfect segue into our politics. So, I dropped Rob Ford. I don't know if you heard at the end there was a time where he was like basically denying it at a press conference.
What's the hardest thing about being an MC, like especially now?
I think monetizing it and really making good money off of it right now. Like when Project Lion dropped, it like you could sell albums and you can make some good money. Like I pressed 1,000 copies of that and sold all the physical copies. Like I don't even have a physical copy for myself. Plus whatever was online. That was a good time. You can make money, put aside a budget for your next album, add money for like a feature, video, stuff like that. And then when you do shows, you're rocking shows. So things changed where, like, I think musically, before people used to, basically, the goal was to sell albums. So you would do shows just to sell albums. That's it, sell your merchandise, and that's how you make money. It's transformed into something where now you don't make money off the albums anymore because no one buys albums. They're just streaming everything. And the payouts on Spotify and iTunes and all these places are so low. They're so terrible. Like, I have way more listeners and way more streams and way more fans than I did then. And I'm making less money than I did when I was selling albums, So you're not making as much money. And so what happens now is artists basically have to tour and you have to do shows.
Right.
To make money. That could be a pain in the ass too because that deals with if you don't have a manager and things like that. Like when we were on tour, there was times we'd have to like chase down the promoter, And we got to a point where we were just like taking, not there, then I don't know what their goal is, like, to run out on it. But when I was young and you used to do shows, it was like they kind of finagle you with this, like, oh, do it for the culture,
right?
Or do it for promotion. It's free promotion. There's 200 people there. They're gonna know your name. That's cool and all, but like, once you've done that for decades now, I've already paid my due. It's time to get paid. Like, I gotta get paid. I don't know what to tell you. I've mastered my craft to this point that people are coming to listen to it or purchasing it. So yeah, that's the most frustrating thing. So now it's like, it's not like anything else. It's not like selling weed or anything like that. That's instant gratification where you're making money right off the bat. You're investing time and effort into it, and now because of COVID, and it's a very tricky thing. Ross Marciano recently released an album, and he didn't stream any of it. He has a pretty loyal fan base.
Yeah.
But he's only been selling his albums right off of his website. He's been making money. He's been doing it that way. You got to kind of maneuver around the system now.
So that I get what you're saying is, it's all streams, and you don't really need a label, I guess.
I don't think so. I don't think you need a label anymore. Aside from the fact that they would just give you a budget, or there maybe you might have access to radio, and because they do payola and pay for play and things like that, and it's pretty expensive, right? But with the internet and SoundCloud and all this other stuff, and I just got into a sense where it's just like I'd rather build up my own fan base organically, do it the grassroots way. It's not going to be instant. It's not going to be overnight, but I can slowly see it building. And, you basically want to get paid for what you're worth and your value. So that's why I would think most artists would want to go that route. For instance, there's rappers out there that a lot that people haven't even really heard of.
Right.
They're Classified as one of the biggest Canadian rappers over here. Mm-hmm. And he's not, I'm pretty sure he's not really known anywhere outside of Canada. But, he still makes it on the radio. If he drops an album a year, he can still do a tour. And I'm pretty sure he makes good money. I'm okay with that.
So how did Drake change the game up there?
I think after Drake, Canada became like an epicenter almost for a lot of talent, because you had Drake, you had The Weeknd, you had a lot of producers, 40. These guys blew up Boy Wonder. So he basically opened the gates. You can't even really hate. I know there's people out there that just hate on him for whatever reason, but at the end of the day, I mean, the guy's been in top 10 Billboard since he came out. I mean, that's a little bit more than just a one-hit wonder or a gimmick. You gotta really change. You gotta really maneuver.
Dude, I remember. I still remember bumping that Tuesday song, bro. When I was getting drunk after work on a Tuesday. Probably say the same thing about the Raptors when they won it. It provided a spot. Yeah. It provided a spotlight.
Yeah, you know what? 100%. I don't think Toronto Raptors fans are very loyal. When I came over here, they're very diehard fans, and they've been through from the beginning when they were a pretty shitty team. And it's kind of weird because they were a little delusional at first. I don't think they realized outside of Toronto or outside of Canada, nobody was really checking for the Raptors.
I always liked Toronto because I'm a big Magic fan, and we got T-Mac from you guys, so yeah, T-Mac was my guy. So I'm a big Magic fan.
I used to love Vince Carter, man.
He went to Orlando.
I wish they had stayed. They were together for a little while. Although Patrick Ewing is the better player, and this is who I grew up on. So the reason I'm a Knicks fan is when I was a kid, my uncle took me to a game, and seeing them for the first time, I just fell in love, and that was my team. But yeah, John Starks was just undersized, underdog, and just always fought to the bitter end, man.
Well, that's interesting that you say it's the Knicks, because aren't the Knicks and Heat rivals?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I ran into a lot of problems as a kid, growing up and going to school with Knicks gear on. You know what's funny? In Florida, it's it's almost like a gang mentality. With when it comes to the playoffs, it can be dangerous, wearing a jersey at the wrong time. Whereas when I came to Canada, I've been to until quarantine, until this lockdown stuff happened. I've been to every game where the Raptors were playing the Knicks, because they play twice a year in Toronto, right? Twice over there, twice over here. And so when the Knicks come, I always get tickets and I always watch them. But we've been so shitty for so long that since I've been in Canada, every game I've ever been to, we lose. And not only just lose, but we lose terribly. We lose by 40 points, even when Melo was here. But the one difference is when I would come to games here, people were still polite. It's not like there's no threatening manner. They'll hold the door open for you, hey, good luck tonight, man. Hope you guys do good. And it was the weirdest thing to me, because at a Heat game wearing a Knicks jersey, that's not happening at all.
Well, those battles were brutal, man. I mean, Vince Carter and him and Allen Houston. I mean,
there was one playoffs where literally it broke into a brawl. It was a huge brawl. John Starks flipped off the Miami crowd, and I swear the starting lineups for both teams were suspended for the next two games. It was that bad. They would always come to blows.
Talk about what you got going on in the future, man. You got anything lined up?
Yeah, so I've been recording a new project. My homeboy up here, Grins. It's funny. He's actually another MC, and we were always friends for a while. I don't know why we never linked up before, but he was always putting out his own stuff too. But I would go over by his place. He had a studio set up in his basement, and he makes beats, right? So usually I would just go over there and freestyle over beats. I think around the time COVID started happening and we were locked down, he gave me access to his beat collection, and they're really like it's a different from DJ Deluxe in the sense that it's like really like just boom bap early '90s, that real like raw type of shit like that that we grew up on, and it makes it easy. So the whole point of the project was I wasn't going to overthink and conceptualize every single song. I kind of just wanted to put the pen to the pad and just really just go back to like a early like braggadocio basic punchlines and that sort of thing. A lot of the stuff I've been looking at online is like I've been discovering a lot of MCs who are just like guys like Marlon Craft and these dudes who are just like doing videos in the booth and just bodying instrumentals. So I kind of like that idea, and I kind of wanted to go back to that kind of skill of doing those things. So we've been recording for a while, man. We've got a few projects. We started doing videos. Like I've invested in a camera, and I've been learning how to edit videos. That's a big thing for me too now. I want to produce my own content.
Yeah, man.
Consistently. So I did the last 4 episodes where we were trying to record. We would record, send it to me, and I'll try to like do a video and edit the video, and I'll try to do it on a weekly basis. But it was tough to get into that cycle. So we're still recording, but I gotta catch up with videos now. But we're not all the way. We have enough to really mix and master and put out. But I think a big thing is we're just trying to figure out like how we're gonna do that now. Like, are we still gonna stream? Are we gonna just sell the album like from our website? For the sake of earning money, or are we just gonna stream? Because here's the thing, right? With streaming, it's like a place like iTunes will literally give you like 60 cents. No, I'm sorry, they keep 60 to 70 cents of every dollar spent, right? So if you buy a single, literally I'm getting like 30 cents out of it, which is kind of frustrating because it's like you guys had nothing to do with writing or recording or producing any of this. The other hand of it is I think I've gotten a lot of fans and a lot of listeners from those platforms because there's people who have discovered me that I don't think would have found me if it wasn't on those streaming services. When I put out the Lost Boys album, there was like orders from some pretty like I had an order from like Estonia. I didn't even know where that was. I had to like look it up on a map and figure it out. So things like that are kind of cool, but at the same time they're also pretty much raping artists in this industry for what it is. So we're still going over that, but I think in the meantime we're just enjoying the whole creative process. Just writing the beats, recording when we're together, and then doing these videos too.
The pandemic, how did it affect your career?
I think it really put everything to a standstill, man. It's really hard to find motivation sometimes when you're not able to network at events, you're not able to rock shows. I think performing at shows is I didn't realize till now was a very like self-securing kind of feeling, because you work so hard on your album and recording music and you're putting out your videos and you get feedback, but it's not the same energy as getting on a stage and seeing a crowd of 100 people, recite lyrics back to you, and just have a good time overall. It confirms what you're doing. Like, I am doing the right thing, and I am doing a good thing, and I am making progress. Not having that connection with people and with listeners, it can be a little. It sounds like you're just like talking to yourself when you're rapping and stuff like that, So yeah, I mean, not being able to do shows, it takes a chunk out of your income for music. Period. And then secondly, it's just even little things like when you're like recording videos, let's say, it's all very isolated. You can't really be like in a crowd of people or have your whole crew around you and stuff like that, because over here, even though it's slowing down in America, like Canada's been doing a pretty botched job of vaccinating, and so because of that, our numbers are still going up, and it's kind of crazy. Like we're pretty behind. Like I think when I look at the world news of countries that are handling COVID, it's like everybody's kind of like on an upswing right now. Doing well. It's India and it's us, and I don't know how that even correlated really, but it's been a very slow recovery for us right now.
Yeah, India's getting their ass kicked, unfortunately.
Yeah, and going to the studio, like me and Grizz can still link up and we can still do music together, but we can't have like sessions where like other artists drop by too, and you got to get creative these days.
Where can people find you?
You can find my music at www.livekaos.com. You can find my videos on YouTube, LYVEKAOS. Follow me on Instagram, on Twitter. Instagram and Twitter is building up pretty well. YouTube, my views and stuff are pretty low. I don't promote it as much as I really should. But yeah, you can find me on every major platform, man. Google Play, iTunes, Apple Music, SoundCloud. I don't know, whatever the fuck. But yeah, man. Thank you for having me on, man. It's a pleasure, man.
Honor's all mine, man. I appreciate you taking time.
Yeah, no problem, man. Anytime, man. Look forward to chopping it up with you again.
You stay safe, okay?
Will do, man.
All right, man. Have a good night. Thanks, everybody, who came on and joined us.
Appreciate it. Much respect to everyone.
Okay, now that was awesome. It was great chatting with Lyve Kaos. I have so much respect for the guy, and I'm looking forward to seeing more of his success moving forward, and eventually having him back for a reunion. All right, coming up next on the podcast, I am set to be joined by Dawn Damari, the host of A Teaspoon of Healing podcast. She has been on the podcast a few times before, but I have the question for her. I was thinking, especially during these COVID times, how does one achieve ultimate peace and serenity? Well, she is going to come on the show and give me my answer. That should be up, early next month. I also am recording the next episode of Mr. Cynic on ufology, which is the study of UFOs. So, thank you for listening to this episode of Sensibly Cynical. You can check us out on Twitter at Cynical Sensibly, Instagram Sensibly Cynical Pod, and you can check out our Facebook group. Also, if you could please subscribe, rate, and review us on iTunes, I would be highly, 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 highly appreciative. Okay, that's it. Please stay safe and take care.